London, 1666, a vibrant metropolis, thrumming with life, yet teetering on the brink of an unimaginable catastrophe, cloaked in the shadow of disease and political unrest. Its labyrinthine streets, packed with tightly built wooden houses, were a tinderbox, waiting for a single spark to ignite an inferno that would redefine its very existence. For centuries, London had grown organically, its medieval layout a charming yet dangerous patchwork of timber frames and narrow alleyways, vulnerable to the slightest flame. The summer had been unusually dry, baking the city's ancient structures, making them exceptionally susceptible to combustion, a tragic prelude to the impending disaster. Citizens went about their daily lives, oblivious to the dormant peril lurking within their homes and shops, a fire risk deeply embedded in the very fabric of their city. Little did they know, a forgotten ember in a seemingly ordinary bakery would soon unleash a torrent of destruction, forever altering the course of their magnificent capital. This is the story of the Great Fire of London, a devastating event that consumed much of the city, yet ultimately paved the way for a grand new vision, a rebirth from the ashes. On the fateful night of Sunday, September 2nd, the tranquility of Pudding Lane was shattered as a small, seemingly innocuous spark came to life in Thomas Farriner's bakery. The baker, a man of ordinary means, had retired for the evening, perhaps neglecting to fully extinguish his oven, leaving a smoldering ember to ignite dry firewood nearby. In the dead of night, as most of London slept soundly, the flames began their insidious crawl, quietly consuming the timbers of the humble bakery, unseen and unheard. When Farriner's servant awoke to the suffocating smoke, it was already too late. The fire had taken hold, rapidly spreading through the building's highly flammable structure. The family, including Farriner himself, managed a desperate escape, scrambling from an upstairs window, tragically leaving behind one maidservant, the fire's first victim. Attempts to douse the burgeoning blaze were futile, the small bucket brigades and manual pumps proving no match for the rapidly escalating inferno in the early morning hours. Local watchmen, witnessing the burgeoning flames, alerted the Lord Mayor, Sir Thomas Bloodworth, who, upon inspection, infamously dismissed the fire as trivial. His dismissive remark, "A woman might piss it out," tragically sealed the fate of countless buildings, and indeed, a significant portion of London, hindering immediate action. This initial underestimation proved disastrous, costing precious hours when the fire might still have been contained, allowing it to grow into an unstoppable force. The primary culprit in the fire's rapid and devastating spread was the prevailing architectural style of 17th century London, dominated by timber-framed buildings. These homes, often constructed with highly combustible materials like pitch and tar, were stacked closely together along narrow, winding streets, forming a perfect fuel source. Many houses even overhung the streets, their upper stories almost touching across the lanes, effectively creating tunnels where flames could leap and spread with terrifying speed. To make matters worse, a strong easterly wind began to whip through the city, fanning the flames with relentless intensity, transforming the small bakery blaze into a raging inferno. The dry conditions, following an extended summer drought, meant that every beam, every plank, every rooftop was primed to catch fire, accelerating the blaze's destructive path. The rudimentary firefighting methods of the era, relying on buckets, axes, and primitive hand pumps, were hopelessly inadequate against such a powerful, widespread conflagration. Without an organized fire department or a readily available water supply, citizens could only watch in horror as their homes, shops, and livelihoods were devoured by the encroaching fire. The heat generated was immense, creating its own powerful drafts and eddies, sucking oxygen into the heart of the blaze and propelling embers far ahead, igniting new fires. The narrow, twisting lanes, a hallmark of medieval urban planning, acted like chimneys, channeling the superheated air and flames, making escape routes increasingly perilous. As the fire raged through Monday, September 3rd, it devoured everything in its path, swallowing whole parishes and rapidly advancing towards the heart of the city. The sky above London transformed into a horrifying spectacle, a lurid glow of orange and red, reflecting the relentless, consuming power of the inferno below. Residents, now fully aware of the dire threat, began a desperate scramble to save their belongings, piling them onto carts or fleeing towards the perceived safety of the River Thames. The river itself became a chaotic scene, choked with boats of all sizes, ferrying panicked citizens and their salvaged possessions away from the encroaching heat and smoke. Warehouses filled with highly flammable goods like oil, spirits, and coal fed the fire with explosive energy, turning sections of the city into volatile, uncontrollable blasts. Despite the escalating crisis, the Lord Mayor remained hesitant, delaying the crucial order to demolish buildings to create fire breaks, fearing the cost and legal repercussions. Such preemptive destruction was the only known effective method against urban fires of this magnitude, yet indecision allowed the blaze to gather even greater momentum. Finally, by late Monday, King Charles II himself intervened, issuing explicit commands for wholesale demolition, but by then the fire had grown too vast to be easily contained. The sheer speed of the fire's advance often rendered these belated efforts useless, as new blazes ignited across the improvised fire breaks, driven by flying embers and intense heat. One of the most tragic and iconic losses was that of St. Paul's Cathedral, a magnificent Gothic edifice, the spiritual heart of London, which had stood for over 600 years. Despite initial assurances that its stone walls would withstand the flames, the cathedral, then undergoing extensive renovations, was surrounded by flammable scaffolding and timber. The library, filled with countless precious books and manuscripts, was moved into the cathedral's crypt for safekeeping, a desperate act of preservation that proved tragically futile. On Tuesday, September 4th, the inferno reached St. Paul's, and in a terrifying display of its destructive force, the ancient timber roof quickly caught fire and collapsed. Eyewitnesses described a horrifying scene as the intense heat melted the lead from the cathedral's expansive roof, which then flowed down the streets like molten rivers of silver. This river of molten lead, a truly apocalyptic image, snaked through the rubble, further contributing to the inferno and making escape incredibly hazardous for those nearby. The collapse of St. Paul's was not just a physical loss. It was a profound psychological blow to Londoners, a symbol of their faith and heritage reduced to smoking ruins. The scale of destruction was becoming unfathomable, with entire districts vanishing under a blanket of smoke and ash, leaving behind only the charred skeletons of buildings. Thousands of homes, countless shops, and hundreds of public buildings, including the Royal Exchange and Guildhall, succumbed to the relentless consuming flames. Amidst the chaos, the human toll was immense, though surprisingly, recorded deaths were few, likely due to the fire's relatively slow advance allowing most people to flee. However, the displacement was catastrophic, leaving tens of thousands homeless and destitute, their lives uprooted, their possessions lost to the inferno's insatiable hunger. People congregated in open fields outside the city walls, particularly in Moorfields, where makeshift camps sprang up, offering little shelter from the elements or their despair. The king and his brother, James, Duke of York, actively participated in firefighting efforts, organizing demolition and relief, a rare show of royal solidarity with their suffering subjects. The Royal Navy was deployed to assist, using gunpowder to create more effective fire breaks by blowing up houses, a more decisive tactic than the axe and crowbar. For 3 agonizing days and nights, the fire raged, an apocalyptic force reshaping the very landscape of one of Europe's greatest cities, leaving an indelible scar on its history. The sky remained choked with smoke and ash, visible for miles around, a stark testament to the magnitude of the disaster unfolding within London's ancient walls. The Thames, once a bustling artery of trade, now reflected the angry orange glow of the burning city, its waters carrying debris and the silent testimony of a city in torment. The air was thick with the acrid smell of burning timber, melting lead, and charring flesh, a pungent reminder of the destructive power unleashed upon the unwitting populace. Finally, on Wednesday, September 5th, a change in the weather offered a glimmer of hope. The strong easterly winds that had fueled the fire began to subside, replaced by gentler breezes. This crucial shift, combined with more effective fire breaks created by blowing up buildings, allowed the firefighters, now better organized, to finally gain the upper hand. The flames, deprived of their furious wind-driven propulsion, began to slow their relentless march, eventually being brought under control, though smoldering continued for weeks. The fire had consumed an area of over 400 acres, destroying approximately 13,200 houses, 87 parish churches, 6 chapels, and numerous public buildings, a truly staggering loss. While the physical devastation was immense, the fire also, paradoxically, brought an end to another plague that had gripped London, the Great Plague of 1665. The intense heat and subsequent rebuilding efforts effectively eradicated the rats and fleas that carried the bubonic plague, offering a tragic silver lining to the disaster. The immediate aftermath was one of immense hardship, but also a remarkable resilience. Londoners, despite their losses, were determined to rebuild their beloved city. King Charles II immediately issued a proclamation ordering that new buildings be constructed of brick or stone rather than timber, a direct lesson learned from the Inferno. This new building code, enforced with strict regulations, aimed to prevent a recurrence of such a catastrophic event, fundamentally altering the city's architectural landscape. Sir Christopher Wren, a brilliant architect, emerged as a key figure in the rebuilding efforts, presenting ambitious plans for a completely redesigned, grander London. Though his grand master plan for wide boulevards and radial streets was ultimately not fully implemented due to complexities of land ownership, his influence was profound. Wren was responsible for designing 51 new churches, including the magnificent new St. Paul's Cathedral, which stands today as a testament to his genius and the city's rebirth. The reconstruction of London was a monumental undertaking, taking decades to complete, but it transformed the medieval city into a more modern, safer, and healthier capital. The narrow, winding lanes gave way to wider streets, and public squares were incorporated, improving sanitation and reducing the risk of future widespread fires. The Great Fire of London was a pivotal moment in the city's history, a cataclysm that, despite its immense destruction, catalyzed essential changes in urban planning and architecture. It taught invaluable lessons about fire prevention, building materials, and the critical importance of swift, decisive action in the face of disaster, lessons still relevant today. From the ashes of this terrible inferno, a stronger, more resilient London emerged. A city that learned from its pain and rebuilt itself with a renewed sense of purpose and foresight. The memory of the flames, the molten lead, and the collapsed cathedral remains a powerful, haunting reminder of nature's wrath and humanity's enduring will to overcome adversity. The Great Fire of London, a story of destruction and rebirth, stands as a testament to the enduring spirit of a city forever forged in the crucible of its own fiery past.